Let's take a little bit of a look at business today and, of course, some of the implications that could play into the markets going into the next, not only months, but also maybe into the next years. And that's how companies are responding to what's happening within their own businesses, but also in the investment cycle and how that works. You guys don't want to miss it. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Bath. Joining me today is Charles Gasparino. He's a senior correspondent for Fox Business. You've probably seen him out there many times on shows like this. But Charlie, welcome into the show. Thanks up.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so I know you've got a book out, Go Woke, Go Broke. You've done a great job on writing this one. I got a chance to read about a third of it, so there's a lot in it yet I still want to cover. But I want to talk a little bit about, first, just about the book itself for some that maybe have not had a chance to see this. What was the kind of the genesis of you putting this book together? You being at Fox Business, you get a chance to see all these corporations and how they're basically doing their business. What was the lean in for you to go this direction?
Well, I've been doing this a long time. I've been a business journalist since 1989. I went to University of Missouri Journalism School. I do have a minor, or the equivalent of a minor, in economics. So this is always what I wanted to do. And I always wanted to work at the Wall Street Journal, and I got my chance. I worked there about 9 years. I've written, this is my sixth, book. I mainly do investigative stories. I try to cover trends. I did a lot of stuff on insider trading. I did a ton of stuff on sleazy behavior of big Wall Street firms. I wrote a bestseller on the financial crisis. There is an interesting trend out there that I noticed that became bigger after 2021 after 2020. And it's like sort of this movement of these big companies to like embrace politics, and not just any politics, but
right.
Progressive politics. And it was virtue signaled from the top, these CEOs coming out and saying how it began with stuff that was kind of mild. I remember covering at the Wall Street Journal, socially responsible investing, maybe not giving money to charities, using shareholder money to advance certain causes. Then it became something bigger in the mid-1990s when the UN started to tout something known as ESG, environmental social governance investings, where asset managers would actually force on their portfolio companies, that was the theory, to embrace these sort of progressive ideals, whether it's DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, cutting back if you're an oil company, making sure they build windmills and not drill for oil. So all these things, but it was very niche. But then it somewhere along the line, I noticed it blew up. And then all of a sudden you had Larry Fink of BlackRock running around, the guy running more money than anybody in the world, $10 trillion, saying we're going to force change at companies. And in terms of diversity, in terms of reducing their carbon footprint, you go down the line, and we're going to use our might, and through this ESG investing style, we're going to do that. And so I was writing about that, and then something happened. We come out of the pandemic. About a year in, this bank implodes. It's called Silicon Valley Bank, and I'm a financial reporter, so I'm covering why it imploded, its balance sheet problems. And I noticed that as it was not minding the store, so to speak, on their balance sheet, they were engaged in all this woke stuff. DEI, endless DEI sessions, the ESG writ large. The local regulator of the Fed, the San Francisco Fed, because it's located in Silicon Valley, was a big proponent. It was a proponent of Black Lives Matter. Why a local Fed official would do that is beyond me. But Black Lives Matter is a fairly radical social justice movement. And then that became my initial idea was to do a story on this bank that blew up because it missed the ball. It took its eye off the ball, so to speak. And then things started happening all at once. Budweiser its sales started to implode because it hired a trans woman as a social media influencer, put it in one of their commercials. This trans woman activist actually is a fairly prominent trans woman activist, and there was a customer rebellion. It was a customer rebellion at Starbucks because of some of the cultural things it was doing when it had massive Pride Month display. People were getting really angry at Disney because it was moving far to the left. They even opposing a law that forbid in Florida that said you're not supposed to teach sex ed to children. It's a very popular law among people, but Disney went out on the limb. And, it came to and then BlackRock, which is this huge purveyor of environmental social governance investing, was in the middle of the culture war too. I mean, we had inflation, and people started pinning some of the inflation on ESG because it literally, sort of incentivizes oil companies not to drill when we needed more drilling. I mean, you had coming out of the lockdowns, we had people back to work. We had supply chains issues. We had a war between Russia and Ukraine, which further crimped oil supply. And we had higher gas prices, yet you also had ESG. And that's where I thought, it's a perfect shitstorm, so to speak. And the book is right there. It almost writes itself. Obviously, it didn't totally write itself. I spoke with so many people on this. I mean, I spoke with Larry Fink at length. I spoke with Mark Cuban. I spoke with people on every side. I tried to do this book in a certain way. I mean, it does have an attitude. It is funny, watching woke CEOs sort of rationalize their wokeness is funny. I mean, how, Jamie Dimon taking a knee for Black Lives Matter. And then I went back to him 3 years later and said, I'm just going to put this in a book. And his people went nuts saying, oh, he wasn't taking a knee for Black Lives Matter. He was just taking a knee to fit in the photo. I mean, some of this stuff is stupid and funny.
Yeah.
But there's this thing here, why should a corporation, which exists mainly to put food on the table for its employees, help shareholders, engage in progressive politics? This is not like it's doing both sides. It's literally one. And I trace how we got there. It was a slow burn to get there, and I give all the reasons how it happened.
So a couple of things, within that, obviously BlackRock backed off of the ESG considerably over, the last couple of years. In fact, I think Fink has gone on stage many times talking about that, and they've kind of repivoted over to what's happening within, digital asset space, obviously with the Bitcoin ETF. Absolutely. But they see the potential for real world assets. We'll talk about that to be tokenized here in a bit. And I would agree with you. I think there has been a big movement of corporate America starting to slide into politics. Speaking of that, it appears that we are also starting to see corporations take sides, which has never really been done before, to your point that you were talking about in the book. I'm looking at this advocate site that has launched over the last couple of weeks. And you guys probably have watched this. Eleanor kind of chatted a little bit. I saw some of your tweets right here. This went live last night. Of course, it had Chuck Schumer on. I want to play a clip from that interview, or I guess it was statements last night that I want you to listen to. Let's go to this first clip.
My goal is to get something passed out of the Senate and into law by the end of the year. We need to help leaders in the House and Senate who have proven track records of wanting to get these things done, who know how to turn on their, quote, pragmatic switch. I promise you this, I want to keep engaging with all of you to pass sensible, long-lasting legislation. So let me say it again. My goal is to get something passed out of the Senate and into law by the end of this year, and I believe we can make that happen. Crypto is here to stay, no matter what.
All right, so that was the first point, that we had not seen Schumer really take a position. Came up in this, in this somewhat town hall. He also went on a little further. I want to add a bonus clip here, and then I want to get your opinion after this. Let's go to this clip too.
We cannot afford to continue to sit on the sidelines. Sadly, there are a lot of members in Congress nowadays who built their political brands around creating spectacle and sensationalism instead of putting in the hard work of legislation.
All right, so he was mentioning that around Senator Warren. Okay, so you look at that and what's been happening within kind of the framework of this virtue signaling that we're seeing. Obviously, the Crypto for Harris campaign is now pushing, hopefully going to be voters to be more aware of this. First of all, are you buying what is happening within that effort right now of what you're seeing so far?
Well, kind of getting back to the book a little bit, the last quarter of my book is how woke is breaking up, how there is a consumer backlash against it, and how that's forcing change in the corporate ecosystem, so to speak, to be less woke. Okay, if he is talking about Warren, that's an incredible rift inside the Democratic Party on this, because grandstanding efforts and all that. Elizabeth Warren holds a huge plank in the Democratic Party. She essentially has veto power over, at least in the Biden administration, over every economic appointment, so to speak. She personally, from what I understand, put in Gary Gensler as head of the SEC, a rabidly anti-crypto regulator, as you know. So that to me is a huge story. It does point to the fact is that wokeness doesn't sell. Part of wokeness was to destroy the crypto, in my view. I get into that a little bit in the book. Part of Larry Fink's coming to Jesus against ESG was, simultaneously coming to Jesus when it came to crypto. Remember, he was against crypto. Then he became the first, essentially, to push through the Bitcoin ETF. And I think what people are seeing is that, wokeness, whether it's corporate conformity or conformity in economic issues, is just not going to work. I mean, there is this ecosystem known as crypto that's out there that, listen, I'm a libertarian, so I want this thing to flourish. That doesn't mean I have to personally engage in it. But if this is the future, if this blockchain technology can be the next internet, I'm all for it. And I've had lots of conversations with top crypto people, Charles Hoskinson. I mean, you name it. I spoke with them. They've opened my eyes to a lot of this stuff, where it could go. We're not quite there yet. But I can't tell you that Senator Schumer is going unwoke. What he realizes, though, and these guys are just bottom line when it comes to this, is that there are 40 to 50 million crypto holders out there. Many of them are care deeply about this subject more than most subjects. They will vote and put their money where their mouth is in terms of campaign contributions. Trump has been there early, and he's basically exploited what Gensler and what Elizabeth Warren have done to the crypto industry, and now they want a piece of that. I think the one problem is, though, from just a pure ideological standpoint, crypto people will feel much more at home in a Republican administration than they will with a Democrat. I mean, just the whole notion of Bidenomics and just all these sort of woke capitalism, which is writ large in the Biden-Kamala Harris administration, is all about government control. I mean, let's face it, they want to control the economy. They want to control crypto, which was created to be outside government control. I mean, the whole notion of a blockchain is not to have Elizabeth Warren and Gary Gensler, regulating it, right? I mean, it's writ large. I don't know how Schumer bridges that gap. It makes no sense, because and by the way, there's a degree of gaslighting going on here, Paul. I mean, where was he while Gary Gensler was doing his thing?
Yeah, well, that's the point. I mean, you look at the almost about face, really. Now, granted, there was a little bit of alignment here. If you watched what Crypto for Harris teams were doing, they opened up with Mark Cuban, which did really just a little bit of an intro to get Schumer on. And I know that Cuban and Schumer, they even mentioned it, very close. They talk a lot, apparently. So there is a bit of a camaraderie there between those two people. And I think that may have been the venue. But to your point, it will be interesting, because we have not seen anything come out of the Harris campaign in terms of official statements around blockchain technology, the situation with Gary Gensler. If you look at the Gensler countdown, this is one of our countdown clocks. This will go into January 1st, I think, and this would potentially be a switch for Gensler either resigning or maybe a new assignment. So my question is, do you think that the Democrats, based on what Gensler has done so far, would maybe look at, and especially if you look at Harris's relationship with Warren, do you think that maybe even Kamala Harris would come in and say, we need to make a new way when it comes to the SEC? I know it would happen with the Trump administration, but what are your thoughts?
Well, Harris doesn't stand for anything. I mean, she's, one minute she's the most progressive politician in the world, and now she's, backing off all that stuff. I don't know. I mean, she has no real. I don't think she has any ideological bearing. So if you told me that she would throw Gary Gensler overboard, I'd be like, yeah, why not? The problem is that, Elizabeth Warren does have whether you like her or not, she has an ideological underpinning. Part of that is government control. She is a progressive. And, is Harris really going to diss Elizabeth Warren? I mean, she needs Elizabeth Warren right now. I don't think she's going to. By the way, it just shows you just how lame this crypto for Harris is. Why didn't one person ask Schumer about getting rid of Gary Gensler?
Well, that was the thing. There wasn't really a Q&A. It wasn't a town hall. It was more of a position statement throughout the night. So it was a little bit odd as we watched through it. We recorded the whole thing. It looked a little bit to be posturing for somewhat of a positioning statement, much like what we've seen out of Democrats here recently, is that just not taking questions.
I just can't imagine scripted stuff is going to sell to some of the most cynical people. I mean, you don't buy crypto because, you believe in, because you're not cynical. I mean, you're cynical. You're worried about the future. You're worried about debasing the dollar. You fear government control. Those are all the things that Schumer is against. So it's just so I can't imagine this thing sold very well to crypto. But it is interesting that crypto is a fad. It suggests it's not. It's a legitimate economic ecosystem and maybe even political movement. I mean, that's what this kind of says.
Yeah, I think that's the key right now. It has become one of the critical components, I think, for the political landscape. And part of this has been done because of what's happened with BRICS in terms of their efforts to de-dollarize, what's happened with the EU, with their efforts on a regulatory front with MiCA. All of that is in alignment with, unfortunately, the United States being a little bit behind the eight ball, not necessarily taking a position yet. Obviously, the Democratic Party has taken no position other than what we know of the Biden administration, which has been very negative, coming out with Gensler and Warren and their anti-crypto army. So you are right about the crypto audience. Very, very cynical, very, very conservative when it comes to this is what we think the kind of the future of all this is. What do you make of what is appearing to happen on some of these prediction polls? This, of course, is the Polymarket poll. TYT, I don't know if you follow Cenk Uygur and his team over there. More of a left progressive publication. They talk a lot about these polls because they seem to be, kind of put your money where your mouth is on these election polls or prediction polls. What are your thoughts on these in comparison to what's really happening out there in the markets?
I don't think polls mean that much right now, to be honest with you. Some of this is just, how do you feel about the candidate? Most people are not immersed in this like we are. I will say this. The polls had Hillary Clinton up in 2016 to midnight. Mm-hmm. The prediction markets, and she lost. These are kind of like snapshots. Listen, does that mean Donald Trump doesn't have work to do? Of course he does. That's what this is showing. It's showing sentiment that she is starting to win in the sentiment ground game, which has got to be disconcerting for him. But, I saw we had a Fox poll came out yesterday. It was 50 to 49, him leading. If that's the way the election's going to break down, with him getting 50% of the popular vote, he wins easy because that will put him ahead in those battleground stakes, most likely. So, this is dynamic. Donald Trump is a tough candidate to get to do candidate stuff. I think that's why I've known the guy for a long, long time. He's not conventional, and
Yeah.
conventional means you stick to 3 or 4 different themes. How incompetent Kamala Harris is, and pin inflation and this and that. But he's going off on tangents because that's what he does. That's Donald Trump. If you know anything about him. Now, it's what's kind of endearing about him because he's his own man, but it's also maddening if you're an election consultant working for him. I could tell you that they don't know how to corral him. Now, he may be corralled soon. I mean, he may agree to be corralled.
Well, I think, yeah, now he's starting to feel as there's actually some pressure. And you have to give it to the Democrats because you're exactly right. They've stayed on talking point to the T, not
Right.
taking questions to fall into any traps or really reveal any policy, probably prior to the DNC. So,
Although I will tell you, it is just maddening, again, to see the mainstream media allow that to happen. I mean, this is like they're so in the bed with her. And I don't by the way, let's just say she's really wasn't a lousy vice president, which, I mean, you can make a good case she was, obviously. I mean, to allow her just to skate by without an interview, it's insane. I mean, this is high stakes stuff. I mean, say what you want about Trump, but he goes into the lion's den every other day. And he, goes to the NABJ. He does press conferences. I mean, he walks the walk.
yeah. So Charlie, on to, I'll kind of wrap on that, but I want to kind of get your opinion. Like you said, Fox Business, one of the ones that really kind of set the tone on covering crypto, especially with, Eleanor Terrett, who's been on our show a couple of times. When you look at the current state of things, we'll just use the XRP case as an example. Obviously, the win, what was pretty much a hand slap in terms of a fine in comparison to the $2 billion fine that they were going after versus the $125 million I think they got. What is your position on things like XRP and projects like that right now? Have you maybe reconsidered kind of the future of where blockchain and tokenized assets are going? What's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think you got to kind of look at the cases. We should point out one thing that I point out in the book, which is kind of interesting, confluence of things. Larry Fink was losing at BlackRock a lot of assets under management until he went non-woke. Part of his movement, non-woke, was to embrace crypto, just so you know. And that's, it's interesting. He went there and he knew, because it's like, if you're going to go non-woke, embracing crypto is one way to do it. And whether he believes it or not, it doesn't matter. He went there. That's one thing. In terms of XRP and Ripple, again, I've done so much research into this case. The SEC people that were there that charged him would say they told him to stop doing these coin offerings, and they wouldn't stop. So they had no choice to do it, to basically charge him with selling unregistered securities. The Ripple people say, well, we followed the same playbook as Ethereum. They literally, we did an ICO, we did ICOs, they did an ICO, and you grandfathered them in. It's unfair. One thing I will say, so that's both sides of the story. If I had my druthers as a regulator, I would just leave them alone and start from scratch, create a safe harbor. That being said, there is a ruling out there that Judge Torres put out there. And I think the ruling is weak for crypto. I think it's a dumb ruling, because when you really pick it apart, what she's saying is, and this cannot be allowed to stand, and that's the problem that this ruling has. She said that institutional investors, people who have bought Ripple institutionally, there's a higher bar of disclosure for them than you do for retail people who would buy it in the secondary market. That's kind of like when you get
Why would you say that's different? I mean, because are you saying you agree with that or you don't agree with that?
I don't. And I think the problem with her ruling, again, just talking about the ruling and why I think it's probably going to be overturned and probably not going to be good for XRP. and maybe that's why the price of XRP is kind of like where it is now, where we're, just middling, is that this is a federal judge in the Southern District who works with other federal judges. And I guarantee Judge Torres, who's not an expert at securities law, heard from these other federal judges. Now, I'm not saying I agree with this, just hear me out here, where they said your ruling essentially establishes a two-tier system for disclosure. You set a precedent here. One tier, you're saying the institutional investors should have came in and registered with the SEC. Anybody that bought it institutionally needed to disclose that sale, those securities. But you're saying anybody that bought it under, even if Ripple, and by the way, the way a bond underwriting works or stock underwriting, it generally gets bought largely by institutions and then distributed to retail. As you know, there's a small portion on an IPO that goes directly to retail. But in any event, in the way the securities laws are worked is that they're all about disclosure to the retail investor. And she literally said the retail investor didn't need that registration, which would be the disclosure. And I don't think that can stand. Maybe it can.
Well, her position, I think, from what I've understood in talking with some security lawyers that have come on our show a couple of times, is that there was a contract from an institutional side. So that being, yes, once there is a contract, yes, now you have a security. With retail, and I would also say, just to defend crypto a little bit here, is that when you get into these secondary markets, and you have to remember, we are in a phase where there is a huge shift in the dynamic of how investing is done. And I think Robinhood has kind of proven that, as an example. It's a new generation, there's new expectations, much younger audience than what we've seen in the boomer and the Gen X generation, which really has created most of the wealth in the United States. So I think we're in for maybe just a new set of terms based on a new set of rules that are being brought out through crypto, which are really changing the game.
I don't think it's going to change. The disclosure mandates are never going to change. I mean, that would take an act of Congress. And trust me, neither side will do that. The disclosure mandates on securities are there. And I know you could say this is not a security, right? But if it was a security for an institution, why isn't it a security for a retail holder? I mean, you see where I'm getting at? So the institution buys it. Ripple sells it. Either it knew it was going to be held by retail or should have known. Therefore, there's a disclosure element that needs to be attached for the retail as well. And I think that's the problem with her ruling. She literally established two disclosure regimes. And trust me on this, whether it's new generation or old generation, disclosure is the bedrock of all securities laws, institutional standpoint, and needs disclosure. It's not going to stand. You're not going to be able to, it's going to get overturned in my view, because they're going to say it establishes two disclosure regimes.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, it's good to know.
My view is this: they should have a safe harbor. I'm of the Hester Purse model. This shit is, this is another dynamic. We need to have a safe harbor. We need, we don't need to be dealing with this question right now here. We need to deal with that question. But at some point, it's like, at some point, this is like you're kind of sort of making it up as it goes. And if you start, imputing security laws regimes on nascent technologies that, might not fit perfectly within that regime, you're going to have huge problems. And, Judge Torres inadvertently did that. Yeah. She doesn't know it, which is the scary part. She said that the institutional sales have a higher duty for disclosure than anybody that bought it retail. because they bought into the secondary market, but retail often buys in the secondary market, and you still have to get disclosures if it's a publicly traded stock or bond.
Yeah, I think there's a lot yet to be determined here for sure.
Yeah.
We're definitely gonna, but to your point, I think you're right. The safe harbor angle, which may get it, the toothpaste back in the tube is going to be tough. Now I think we're in for a regulatory fight for a lot of this. And you're right. I think you should talk to.
Depends on who gets elected. I think if Trump gets elected, I think Vivek Ramaswamy, I think, would talk with Hester, and I think there would be something like this. I mean, I think they would this would go there. I think it would probably stop the Ripple case in its tracks. It'll be a do-over on all this stuff. And then there will be some sort of I think a meeting of the minds on what people have to do when they issue these things. Maybe it's a disclosure that's a mild disclosure. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could do this, but this current, the fact that, see, here's the problem with the way they regulated it. Once it gets thrown in the courts, you're always going to confuse the whole issue. I saw this covering insider trading. Everybody thinks insider trading is like one law, right? It's not. It literally is a bunch of case laws which create the sort of the mandate that allows the Justice Department and the FBI to investigate and to charge you with insider trading. And and by the way, it's changed over the years. At one point, you had to steal the information. Say you work for Apple, I would have to go in and either steal the information from you, or I bribe you to give me the information. If I ask you to give me the information, and there's no bribe, that's not insider trading under the current case law. And that's why you have all these knucklehead judges like Judge Torres making case laws on stuff they know nothing about. So that's why we need a safe harbor here and start from zero.
Wow, well, that's a big one. And you think right now that Republican White House, most likely this gets done. A Democrat White House, do you think this gets done, or what's your position?
No way. No way is Chuck Schumer or Harris or any of these people gonna buck Elizabeth Warren. Listen, I don't know what Harris feels in her heart about politics. She may be the most, she's a mile wide and an inch deep, just intellectually, but who knows what her ideology is. I will say that taking on Elizabeth Warren, she's out of her mind. She's not going to do it.
Interesting. Charles Gasparino, author of Go Woke, Go Broke, the inside story of radicalization of corporate America. So check his book out there. Charlie, it's been great having you on the show. Thank you so much for stopping in today. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it.
You bet. All right, you guys, if you're not in on the Diamond Circle, which is our own private member group, that's where we do additional podcasts, more research, all that good stuff. Check it out down below. We'll leave a link in the description. And of course, if you're not following me on X, do that. It's @PaulBaron. I'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.